You have been a samurai for 31 years, and you do not yet know that in 4 months the word itself will be illegal, not restricted, not regulated, illegal. The swords at your side, the top knot that marks your rank, the right to cut down a commoner who dishonors you in the street, all of it will be written out of existence by men in Western suits, sitting in a building that smells like foreign ink. It is 1876. The Meiji government has been dismantling your world one edict at a time since 1868. And you have watched each cut with the discipline your father beat into you, telling yourself it was reform, it was necessary, it was the price of a Japan that survives. What you have not told yourself, what you have refused to finish thinking, is that reform requires a future, and you are not in it. You are sharpening your blade this morning in the way you have sharpened it every morning since you were 11 years old. The sound of the whetstone against steel is the oldest sound in your life. It will still be the same sound when they tell you that carrying this blade in public is now a criminal offense. Your father explained it to you the way his father explained it to him. The sword is not a weapon. Any peasant can carry a weapon. The sword is a soul made visible. Katana wabushi no tamashi. It is not a metaphor. It is a cosmology. The blade holds the spirit of everyone who forged it, everyone who carried it, everyone who died by it with honor. When you wear it, you're not one man. You are a lineage. You are the sum of every oath kept, every battle decided, every lord served without flinching. The weight of it on your hip is not the weight of iron. It is the weight of a name that has been worth something for 200 years. Your great-grandfather carried a blade into battle at Sekigahara. Your grandfather carried one through the peace that followed. Your father carried one through the long quiet of the Edo period, when the wars stopped and the samurai became administrators and scholars, and the edges of their blades grew dull from ceremonies rather than combat. You inherited this. The discipline, the refinement, the intricate etiquette of a warrior class that had been at peace so long it had become a kind of performance. And you accepted it, all of it, because a performance of excellence is still excellence, and a blade that is never drawn is still a blade. The stipend arrived last year, not this year. Last year, the government converted your hereditary stipend into bonds and called it modernization. Before that, in 1871, they told you the domains were dissolved and your lord's obligation to house and feed you was the domain's obligation, and the domain no longer existed. They did not say these things harshly. That is what you remember most clearly. How gentle the language was. Reorganization, rationalization, the construction of a unified national identity. What they were actually saying, under the gentle language, was this: the system that gave your life meaning existed to serve a feudal order, and the feudal order is over, and you are therefore a man without a function whose function was everything. You have spent the last 8 years watching your peers respond to this in one of 3 ways. Some went into the new Meiji bureaucracy and learned to navigate it in Western clothes, filing papers instead of carrying swords. Some retreated entirely, gave up the top knot, moved to the countryside, tried to become farmers or merchants, tried to become something the new Japan had a use for, and some did what Saigo Takamori did last year, what 1,000 men are still dying for in Satsuma right now. Stood up, drew the blade, and marched against the government in the last convulsion of a world that knows it is ending. You have not decided what you are yet. That is the most honest thing you can say about yourself at this moment. You are sharpening a blade whose legal status is currently under debate, and you have not decided what you are. The young men in the new Imperial Army do not understand what they have not been taught. You watch them sometimes, drilling in their Western uniforms with their Enfield rifles and their French-trained officers, and you feel something that is not quite contempt and not quite grief and not quite admiration. They are efficient. That is inarguable. A peasant given 6 weeks of rifle training can kill a samurai who has spent 30 years mastering the sword. And the mathematics of this is not a philosophy you can argue against with philosophy. Bushido cannot stop a bullet. The new army defeated Saigo's men at Shiroyama last September with an artillery barrage at 4 in the morning. Massed rifle fire into the dark, 2,000 government troops against 40 samurai who had run out of ammunition and charged with swords. 40 men against 2,000 rifles. And you understand what Saigo understood in that final charge. Not that he was going to win, but that some things need to be finished properly. Some things need an ending that a person chose. The new army is more powerful than any samurai force ever assembled. It is also not yours. It does not know your name in the way that a lord knowing your name once meant that your life had a location in the world, a place where your particular quality of loyalty had been recognized and would be remembered. Here is what they did not take. They could not take this. The years of practice exist inside your body now in a way that has nothing to do with stipends or edicts or the Meiji government's opinion of what is necessary. When you sit correctly. When you eat correctly. When you greet a person of higher rank, the bow that happens is not a decision. It is the body executing what 3 decades of training have written into it below the level of thought. Your handwriting. The tea ceremony you perform alone in the mornings before anyone in the house is awake. The way you read a room when you enter it. Who is nervous? Who is hiding something? Who has already made a decision they have not announced? These are not skills that can be rescinded by edict. They are the actual content of the self, and they will remain the content of the self after the blade is locked away or surrendered or melted down for the National Railway Project. What you are is not what you carry. You know this. You have always known this. It is just that what you carry has always been the signal to everyone else, the shorthand, the visible proof of the invisible thing. Without it, you will have to prove it some other way, and you have spent 31 years not knowing what that other way looks like. Your son is 14. He was born into the first year of the Meiji era, and what this means is that everything you have taught him is the education of a world that ended before he understood it had existed. He knows how to hold a sword. You made certain of that. Not because you believed it would protect him, but because a body that has learned to hold a sword correctly has learned a kind of patience that nothing else teaches the same way. He also speaks English better than you. He reads the Western newspapers that come through Kagoshima and explains the diagrams of machinery to you with a fluency and enthusiasm that you watch with something that took you a long time to correctly identify as pride. There are evenings when he speaks, and you are watching not a boy, but the shape of what Japan is becoming, and the shape is not monstrous. It is just different from what you were prepared for, different from what your father's father could have imagined. And neither of those things makes it wrong. Your son is going to be fine. That is the specific, clarifying, devastating truth of your situation. The Japan your son is building himself for is real. The Japan your father trained you to inhabit is also real. They are both real, and they cannot both exist. And one of them has an army with rifles, and the other has 40 men charging into an artillery barrage before dawn. Your son will not need the sword. He will need everything else, and the patience, the precision, the understanding of obligation, the knowledge that a person's quality is measured by what they do when no one who matters is watching. He will need all of that, and he will carry it without the blade, and you have decided to believe, that the carrying is what was always real. There is a thing that happens in the body when you have trained long enough. It is not mysticism. It is physiology. The 10,000 repetitions of a cut, a form, a stance, they do not live in the mind. The mind forgets. The mind gets tired and makes excuses and finds reasons to stop. But the body remembers what the mind agreed to before it knew the full cost of the agreement. When you perform the morning kata now, after 31 years, there is no thinking. You are not watching yourself from the outside, correcting, adjusting. You have become the motion. The sword and the arm and the breath and the pivot of the foot are one continuous event that happens the way water moves downhill. Not because it decides to, but because it cannot do otherwise. This is what your teachers meant when they said mastery. Not the ability to perform the technique, the disappearance of the distance between yourself and the technique. You understand now, at 31 years in, what you could not have understood at 11, that this disappearance is the actual gift. Not the fighting, not the rank, not the stipend or the respective commoners who stepped aside when they saw the swords. The disappearance. The experience of being so completely inhabited by a practice that the self that is usually chattering and anxious and concerned with how it appears goes briefly, cleanly quiet. Every morning for 31 years, you have had 10 minutes of that quiet. Whatever comes next, bureaucrat, farmer, teacher, ghost, you will find a way to keep the 10 minutes. That much you know. The edict is coming. You know this not because anyone has told you, but because you have been paying attention for 8 years and you can see the shape of what is being built. A unified national army, mandatory conscription for all men regardless of birth, Western dress codes for government officials, the railways, the telegraph, the Constitution being drafted in a ministry where men who studied in Berlin sit across from men who studied in London and argue about which foreign model to import. The edict outlawing the public carrying of swords is the last piece. It is coming because you cannot have a modern nation state and a class of men who are legally entitled to execute commoners in the street for perceived disrespect. You understand this. You are not confused about what the Meiji government is building or why. Japan without the samurai class will be something different from what Japan has been. Japan without the samurai class might also survive the thing that is coming. The thing everyone who has studied the Western powers understands is coming. The industrial colonization that has already swallowed India and is moving through Southeast Asia like a tide. The Japan of 40 men charging rifles with swords would not survive it. You understand all of this. Understanding it does not make it easier to set down something you have carried for 31 years. Understanding and accepting are not the same country. You are still in the first one. This morning, the whetstone sounds the same as it always has. The blade takes the edge the same as it always has. Your hands know what to do without instruction, and they do it, and for the length of the sharpening, you're only this, a man and a blade in a practice old enough to have its own kind of gravity. Outside, the street is filling with the sounds of the new Japan. the cart with the Western-style iron wheels, the telegraph boy, somewhere far off the whistle of the train that now connects Kagoshima to the capital in a journey that takes days instead of weeks. You can hear all of it from here. The old world and the new world layered over each other, the way you can sometimes hear two notes that are almost the same pitch, creating a frequency between them that belongs to neither note exactly. That frequency is where you live right now, not in the past, not yet in the future, in the specific, uncomfortable, clarifying space between them. Put down the whetstone for a moment. Hold the blade flat on both palms, the way your father showed you the first time, the way you will show no one because there is no one left to show. Look at it. The steel is not sentimental. It does not know what year it is. It does not know about the Meiji government or conscription armies, or the telegraph, or what happened at Shiroyama. It is iron that men heated and folded and heated again 800 times, until it became something that could hold an edge for a generation. That is all it has ever been. And what you have been, all this time, is the person willing to be shaped by the same process. Heated, folded, made to hold an edge through pressure rather than despite it. The government is going to take the object. They cannot take the process. They cannot take what 31 years of being heated and folded has made of the material that started as a boy of 11 who did not yet know what he was agreeing to. They will take the sword. They will not take the shaping. You are always more than the blade. The edict is going to force you to prove it. And you understand, in this last morning of sharpening, that this is the only test that has ever actually mattered. Not the ones you passed with the sword in your hand, but the one that is coming, the one you will have to pass without it. The whetstone, the steel, the oldest sound in your life, the morning exactly the same as every other morning, except that now you know what it is the last of.